Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk about I'm going to start with some questions, and could you please tell me whether so true or false the cheapest new power in most regions is solar or wind. New technologies spread at a steady, constant rate. Past trends reliably predict future technology. Too many renewables make grids unstable, and prices fall at a steady rate. What do you think? True or false? Please discuss. So, are you ready? You're not ready. True or false? So first one, cheapest new power in most regions is solar or wind. True? False? This is true. Most places in the world now, if you want new electricity, the cheapest thing you can do is either solar or wind. Many places, both are cheaper than nuclear power, cheaper than coal power, cheaper than hydroelectric. New technologies spread at a constant, steady rate. True? False? Yes, false. Past trends reliably predict future technology. True? False? Mostly false. Some things do predict future technology, but mostly they don't. Too many renewables make grids unstable. True? False? This is not the renewables. One issue, if you have a power grid, the electricity has a frequency, and if you're adding power to the grid, it needs to be the same frequency. It's AC, it's alternating. So historically what happens is big power stations have a running, there's a steam turbine, so there's something moving. And if something is moving, that creates a frequency. So the grid is stable because of the frequency. That could be a coal power station, it could be a nuclear power station, it could be a hydroelectric power station. But historically, if something is moving, if you have solar power, there is no frequency. The voltage is DC, it's a constant voltage. And so what has happened, if you suddenly have lots and lots of solar power and you switch off the coal power, then there's a danger that you will lose the frequency. And if you have one frequency coming this way and another frequency out of sync, then everything can stop working. Now, you don't need to have a coal power station. You can, with electricity, you can make a frequency. And for example, now you can use batteries to make the frequency. But so the renewables don't make the grids unstable. Lack of planning makes grids unstable. And probably you can, I remember now in Japan we have very stable, generally the electricity is very stable. I remember when I was younger in England, regularly there would be a power cut. So the power would stop, not because of renewables, just because there were problems with the grid. So you don't need renewables. Renewables do not make the grids unstable, and grids can be unstable with no renewables. So this is not. I think this is not reduced. Next, prices fall at a steady rate. Is that true?
Or
False. I think generally this is false. So I just want to spend a little bit of time looking at trends and predictions about which direction things are moving, and how can we see the future. And a good way of finding out if we can see the future is to look into the past. And here are some quotes from people who were trying to predict the future, who were trying to see the future, and were completely wrong. So have a look at these quotes. See if you can guess which person. So we've got Robert Millikan, a Nobel Physics laureate from 1923. Tom Watson, the IBM chairman, 1943. Lewis Strauss, who was the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, 1954. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, maybe association. Anyway, their World Energy Outlook from 2000, and Vaclav Smil, who is an energy strategist, from 2010. Could you see if you can guess who said what? Good luck. Okay, I'll. So these are some of these are from the 20th century, some of these are from the 21st century. So there's no likelihood man can ever tap the power of the atom. This was a physics. He won the Nobel Prize in physics, and in 1923 he said it was impossible to use the power of the atom, which of course is wrong. And then there's a nice quote from 1943 when Tom Watson, you may know IBM, big computer manufacturer, who thought that maybe there was a market for 5 computers in the world. They're substantially underestimated. At the time, of course, computers were very big, very complicated, and very expensive. And he did not realize that computers would get smaller and cheaper and more powerful. And this is kind of the opposite of the first suggestion. This is suggesting with atomic energy, he was predicting that electricity will be so cheap that nobody will have to pay for electricity, which of course also has not happened. So then into the 21st century, this is from 2000. This is 26 years ago. People predicting that this is the International Energy. Sorry, I keep forgetting what the A is. International Energy Agency, the International Energy Agency, who are responsible for looking at international energy, and their predictions. So they thought that photovoltaics would just be a niche industry, not widely used, and they predicted 2020 10 to 20 gigawatts. And there's another more recent quote that energy transitions are inherently slow, which I'm not sure if this is true, and I'm not sure what's slow. I'm not sure how slow is slow and how fast is fast. And of course, I don't know the future, but I can see. This is the amount of photovoltaics. This is solar electric generation, and you can see it's going up. It's not 10 to 20 by 2020. It's about 700 gigawatts. So that's many times more than was predicted by the International Energy Agency. Around half is in China. But then China also has not half the population of the world. It probably has about half the manufacturing of the world. Probably about half of industry is maybe in China. So, and the other thing that's happening is this is a cost. What's been happening at the same time as we're using more photovoltaics, the cost has been going down. And there's a kind of fairly steady, the amount of power, the amount of solar panels that have been installed, as more are installed, the prices go down. This is called Wright's law, and I think this applies to many different kinds of technology. That as more, whether it's computers or solar panels or shirts or pencils, as they produce more, the costs go down, and it goes down in quite a predictable way. So What's also happened, so this is the cost of solar and wind. There's two kinds of wind power. There's onshore wind and offshore wind. They have the advantage with onshore wind is it's close to where the electricity is used. You don't have to go. The sea can be dangerous. The sea can be quite damaging. But the advantage of the sea is there's more wind, there's more constant wind, and also you can build bigger wind turbines. But in most cases, onshore wind has been cheaper. This is the range of fossil fuels, which is more or less staying constant. Fossil fuels is old technology. It's not really going to get cheaper. Wind and solar are getting cheaper, and now now offshore wind is getting to be cheaper than most fossil fuels. Already, solar has been cheaper than fossil fuels, and onshore wind has been cheaper than fossil fuels for quite a long time. So, of course, this depends where you are in the world. Not everywhere is exactly the same. The other thing that's happening is the return on investment in oil. So the amount of energy that you need to put in to extract oil, it's getting more expensive to find the oil. We've found all the easy oil. What we need to dig deeper and go further to find more recent oil. Interestingly, some of the oil is underneath ice. So as the world gets warmer, it may become easier to find oil, which is what's making the world get warmer. But that's I don't know whether that's irony. And what's happened as well, so with the as solar power, because the amount of solar power is increasing every year, we're using energy to make solar panels. So for a while, the solar panels, we've been using more energy to make solar panels than we have been getting from the solar panels because the production has been increasing. But this has, in the last maybe 10 years, this has flipped. So now the amount of energy that we're getting from solar powers, because the manufacturing has got more efficient and it's got cheaper to make the panels and we're using less resources, it's flipped. So now the photovoltaics are a benefit to the energy grid. So this is this is around 2025. We're now at a very interesting where we have nuclear and solar and wind. And they're now, at the moment, they're all at about the same level. They're all non-carbon or very low carbon. So as far as climate, if we're worried about climate change, nuclear and solar and wind are all good news. But we can see the nuclear is fairly constant. We can see wind is increasing fairly steadily. Solar is increasing very steeply. And this is what's been happening in the past. So one thing we can see, there are curves. And what tends to happen is technology develops on some kind of curve. And often is what's called an S-curve. So at the beginning, it gradually increases quite slowly. Then it starts increasing very quickly. And then it kind of tails off, and then it levels. This is known as an S-curve. And I think we can see where are we if we look at... So for example, a good example of an S-curve is mobile phone adoption. This is global, so around the world, before 1990, nobody had a mobile phone, maybe one or two. They were the size of a brick, and the battery lasted about 5 minutes. And then, as they've got cheaper, they've spread it around the world. So this is the number of phones per person around the world. So right now, right now there are more phones than people in the world, and so it's gonna level off. It's now reached. It's gone past the steep part of the curve, and we're going into the stable level at the top. So this is UK coal use. The UK was one of the first countries to harness coal for steam engines and for power, and also it's been one of the first countries to stop using coal. And we can see that not only has this gone up in a kind of S curve, but it's also going down again later. So this is called a normal curve, where the first part is the S curve going up, and then with most technology, eventually we stop using, or so far we have stopped using most technology. So technologies do have an end. So thinking about the S curve, where do you think we are? Could you please discuss where do you think these are going in the future? What do you think will happen in the future to nuclear and solar and wind? Thinking about the S curve, please discuss. Open your crystal ball, put on your future glasses, and look into the future. Looking at the data, it looks like nuclear is quite stable, and I'll talk a bit more about nuclear. This is the last 25 years. Nuclear has not gone up, but the trajectory, the direction they're going in, solar looks like it will go very high. And wind also looks like it's increasing and not going anywhere. So true or false? Governments always fund the best technologies. Nuclear power projects are usually over budget and late, and renewable energy can only happen with government subsidies. What do you think? Please discuss. So what do you think? Governments always fund the best technologies. True? False? Nuclear power projects are usually over budget and late. True. Renewable energy can only happen with government subsidies. True. False. Yeah. So I think governments are there are some things that will happen anyway. Some things just make sense economically, and those things don't need government funding. There are some ideas that are so stupid that governments should not fund them. And I think ideally the governments will pick projects that will later become helpful and become economic, but right now are not economic. So there's a kind of sweet spot between impossible. And of course, we don't know, governments don't have crystal balls. Governments can't see the future either. So I think sometimes governments will fund the wrong technology. But probably they should do, because I think governments should be thinking of the future, and they should be supporting technology that may come useful. So I'm just going to tell you about something I remember from when I was probably a young teenager. I remember seeing there was a UK TV program called Tomorrow's World, which was about new technology and technology of the future. And I remember seeing this story, this thing called Salter's Ducks, and this was a wave energy generator. And I remember seeing this and thinking, oh, this looks like a wonderful idea. The sea has lots of waves. If we can use the energy from the waves, it's free. And this was in the 70s, so this was coming on the oil crisis. There was a real interest in alternative energy and using energy, not using oil. This was a guy called Stephen Salter in Edinburgh University. and he made a device for getting something like 90% of the energy from waves was captured with these devices. And of course, another advantage, if you have if you're taking power out of the waves, then you have calmer water on the other side of the waves. So this could also be useful for protecting seafront. And this did seem like a wonderful idea, and nothing happened. And I think there is some research showing that what happened is they applied for money from the UK government, and there was what was known as the non-fossil fuel obligation. So the UK government had some money that was set aside for non-carbon, non-fossil fuel energy generation. However, most of the people in the non-fossil fuel obligation committee and the panel that decided where the money was going mostly were nuclear scientists. And most of this money was going into nuclear, which of course nuclear is non-fossil fuel. By the way, nuclear power is also useful for nuclear weapons. So the history of, for example, the Manhattan Project, probably the biggest technological development project in history. That was a secret project that channeled lots of money into nuclear weapon development, and so there's a definite link between nuclear power and nuclear weapons. And so when they got the application for Salter's ducts for wave energy, they changed the numbers to make it seem like the costs would be much more and to seem like the energy was much less. So when they looked at the figures, it didn't make it seemed like this is impossible research. So they didn't fund wave energy. Nuclear power, meanwhile, most nuclear power projects cost more money than they should, and they take more time than they should, and this happens again and again. And this is especially true, this is in fact true for most large-scale projects for dams or for large sports arenas. Most large-scale civil engineering projects take more time and cost more money. And I think part of this is the bidding process. So if you're a government and you want someone to build a sports stadium, for example, you put out a bid and you put out an invitation. Any company can tell you that they're going to build your sports stadium, and you look at their bids on paper and choose the best one. And so if this company says, oh, we can make it for cheaper, you will choose the company that says they can make it cheaper. Often they cannot make it cheaper. When they were writing their application, they were being too generous. So this is something that happens not just nuclear, but especially within nuclear. These are some nuclear projects. This is Hinkley in the UK, which was supposed to be ready last year. It's going to be at least another 5 years, and it's going to cost. It's gone up from 20 billion euros up to about 40 billion euros. There's another project in Finland, another project in France, another project in the USA, and generally nuclear power is more expensive than it says, and it takes longer. So if there is going to be more nuclear power, if they start building now, it's going to be at least 5 years before we can start using it. So there may be some need for more nuclear power. If you want solar panels or wind, solar panels and wind, on the other hand, are much more, the cost is usually the same and the timeline is usually the same. So because the nature of nuclear power, they're very large projects, they're in a special place, each place is different, the people working on the projects are different, whereas with solar panels come out of factories you know what you're getting, and it's much more predictable. So if you want energy quickly, and if you want to know how much you're paying, then nuclear is probably not the best. It's probably not the best option. It is an option, but maybe not the best. And so in the case of this is a big contrast between nuclear power and wave energy. Wave energy was probably too small to be successful, and nuclear may be too big to fail. There's already lots of investment has gone into nuclear already. So yeah, sometimes we fail to see the future, but sometimes people can stop the future from happening. And I'll come to another example later. So in the case of wind and solar, offshore wind is there's a constant. There's a more constant wind if you go out to sea, and you can make with a wind turbine. If you make the turbine twice as big, the area is 4 times as big. So increasing the scale of wind, there's a big improvement if you increase the scale. In the case of onshore, access is easier. The electricity is nearer to where you want it. So both of them have good points. In the case of solar, one big advantage of solar is it's modular. So if you have a bit more space, you can add a few more panels, and whatever the size of your building or whatever the size of the area, you can fit the solar panels wherever you want. So they're scalable and they're modular. And in both cases, the installation is fairly standard. There's no complicated systems that you need for nuclear power, and there's no fuel once you install the panels, once you install the wind turbines, and there's very low maintenance, and of course no pollution. If it's solar or wind, there is no pollution. Nuclear, of course, also there's not no fuel, but there's relatively little fuel. There is no maintenance, and there should be no pollution. If nuclear power is running correctly, then there is no pollution. And it's possible, for example, France has a very good record for safe nuclear power. Many countries have a good record. Some countries do not. I won't go into nuclear power, but I would like to talk a little bit about electric vehicles as another big use of electricity right now, another big use of power now, and a big use of fossil fuels is. Do you drive? Yes. No. Okay. So yes, if you drive, you may have noticed. I don't drive very much, so I don't care about the price of petrol. If you drive, then you may worry about the price of petrol. Recently, has it gone up? So, true or false then? Electric vehicles catch fire. Electric vehicles don't work in cold climates. Electric vehicles are only as clean as the electricity grid. Mining lithium makes EVs worse than fossil fuels. And EVs produce more CO2 than petrol cars over their lifetime. What do you think? Please discuss. True or false? So, yes, electric vehicles catch fire. True. False. Electric vehicles don't work in cold climates. True. False. Electric vehicles are only as clean as the electricity grid. True. False. Mining lithium makes electric vehicles worse than fossil fuels. True. False. And electric vehicles produce more carbon dioxide than petrol cars over their lifetime. True. False. False, yeah. Just the electric vehicles catch fire. One of my teaching colleagues told me this the other day, that electric vehicles, they catch fire. Which is, I think that's really funny, because the internal combustion engine, there is an explosion, thousands of explosions every minute inside, and if you're using petrol, people are talking about, let's use hydrogen. Hydrogen catches fire. And it's sometimes there's LPG cars, LPG catches fire. The least, if you're worried about fire, then electric vehicles are much less dangerous. There's much less chance of catching fire. I think this is partly, I think there have been electric vehicles that have caught fire. There have been batteries that have caught fire. I think it's not impossible. And also, interestingly, I think there's a news bias. And the news bias, I think there is a news bias against electric vehicles and in favour of petrol vehicles and fossil fuels. But there's also a news bias to things that are new. And petrol car catches fire. That's not news. We've seen that in a movie loads of times. It's not going to get on the news. But electric vehicle catches fire, that's a new story. So that's news, that's something exciting. So there is a bias in news, and often we see things that we see on the news. It's not it probably is true, but we're not seeing trends. We're not seeing statistics. We're not seeing what's most likely. We're not seeing what's normally happening. The news is often showing what is unlikely and what's unusual and what's not happening. In terms of mining, lithium mining can be damaging. Fossil fuel mining can also be damaging. I think a big difference between lithium mining, once lithium is mined, it goes into batteries, and those batteries can be recycled. So once those batteries stop working, and there's pretty much 100% recycling rate is possible with lithium batteries. Once fossil fuels are mined, we tend to burn them, and then we need to mine more. So there's a big difference between the two mining things. The biggest thing, so with electric vehicles, this is the big thing with electric vehicles is the efficiency, and petrol. The bottom one is petrol, is gasoline engine. Something like 16 to 25% of the energy of the petrol that you put into a car, only at most a quarter goes into moving. Most of the energy that you're putting in is going into heat and is being wasted. On the other hand, with an electric car, something like 90% of what the energy that goes into the car goes into driving. So they are just to show you how for the equivalent of 1 litre of fuel, you can get something like 16 kilometres on a petrol vehicle. That's maybe Shiojiri, maybe. Whereas with an electric vehicle, you can get over 60 kilometres. Maybe that's Nagano. Maybe sorry, my geography's not. So you can go just to convert this into if you don't drive, just to convert this into wine. This is as if you're buying a bottle of wine, and the petrol car is you buy a bottle of wine, and you get to drink 1 glass. Whereas an electric car, a hybrid's a bit better. Hybrid, you get 1.5 glasses. And an electric vehicle, you're buying 1 bottle of wine, you get to drink 4 glasses. So electric vehicles, you're getting something like 4 times further for the amount of energy that's going in. Interesting, the reason why hybrids are better than petrol engines is because they have a battery and an electric motor. So the reason why hybrids are better is because they're moving towards an electric vehicle. When I first heard about hybrids, I thought they were a great idea because the electricity is so efficient that it makes sense to use an electric and battery is obvious. It seems like an obvious thing to do. And hybrids is a way of getting towards, like on steps. So you start with a petrol engine. If you put in an electric motor and a battery, you can get... One of the advantages with electric vehicles is when you put the brakes on, the movement is recovered and you charge your batteries. So this is used in, I think, Formula One, they use regenerative braking. So a hybrid, once you have an electric motor and a battery, you can recover some of the energy. You can use the petrol motor at a more efficient revs. But the logical development, I thought, was you go from petrol to hybrid, and then you make the battery a bit bigger, then you can plug electricity in, and then make the battery bigger and take out the petrol engine, then you have an electric vehicle. This is what I thought. I thought Toyota, great company. I thought this was their plan when they went to hybrids. The Toyota next, they're going to go to. I'll come back to Toyota in a minute. This is looking at what's going into the car, but of course, the energy needs to get to the car, and so we have to look at the process. This is called well to wheel. So in the case of petrol, the oil needs to be dug out of the ground somewhere. It needs to be transported. It needs to be processed and refined. It needs to be taken to the gasoline station. In the case of electric vehicles, then you need to produce the electricity. You need to get the electricity to the car, to where the car is structured. So looking at the whole life cycle, it's more complicated. And again, this may be very different depending on what electricity you have. If you're in a country that has lots of renewable energy and switch to electric vehicles, then it will be very clean. If you're in a country that has lots of coal, then it will be less clean. So there's a difference. So electric vehicles. Which of these countries has more electric vehicles? A higher percentage of electric vehicles than Japan? Which do you think? Please discuss. Yes. Yes. The answer is all of them. Some of them. So Norway has a very high electric vehicle. I think most of the cars, over 90%, are cars being sold are electric vehicles. And Norway is a very cold country. So if you think that electric vehicles don't work in cold countries, they do. One thing when it's cold, and this also applies to petrol engines, if it's colder and you're using heating, then you're using more electricity. The same in the summer, if you switch on air conditioning, you will use more fuel for air conditioning. One thing with petrol vehicles, because they produce so much heat, you're driving around in a heater. So if you have a petrol vehicle, the heat is free. If it's electric, the heat is not free. You need to switch on a heater, and some more power will be used for heating. Nepal I think they have mostly renewable energy. So most of their electricity comes from hydroelectric. Mm-hmm. And they also have a very high level of electric vehicle imports. The others higher than Japan. Next, and these are the companies making electric vehicles, and there are probably 4 or 5 companies from China on this list that you have never heard of. This is the top, and we have to go down quite a long way before we get to any companies from Japan. We've got Nissan and Toyota, not very high on the list. There are other companies, General Motors, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, BMW. So I wonder, Japan, most of fossil fuels are imported to Japan. So petrol cars rely on imported fuel. Japan is a leader in electronics. Japan is a leader in electric motors. Japan was a pioneer with batteries for camera batteries and phone batteries. Japan is an expert in manufacturing. The first mass-produced electric vehicle was the Nissan Leaf. Why? Question for you. Why are there no Japanese companies in the top 10 electric vehicle? But please discuss. This is a great mystery to me. Maybe you have some ideas. Yes. On the topic of Toyota, This is just last month, Akio Toyota. Everybody is shifting to battery electric vehicles. This is the biggest fear for me. 3 or 4 years ago, I was the only one to say to the media that I love smell, I love sound, and I love engines, and I want to keep the jobs for engine suppliers. But it seems to me that I'm the only one. I feel very alone. The automobile is my toy. I want to make the car which I want to keep in my garage. If I have to make only carbon neutral cars, it's not exciting. I have a nice picture of Mr. Toyota, who I'm going to call Toy Car Man. Yes, so yeah, I have one problem with apart from this line that this is my toy, and it's this is our climate. This is our children's food supply. This is possible war. This is people fighting over water. And he's saying, "Oh, this is my toy." This seems, and I do appreciate that Toyota have been very important in Japan's economy, but I also think, so that's one issue. And the other issue is this idea that I want to keep jobs for engine suppliers. If we look at economics, and if we look at which technologies succeed, it's not the technologies that require more work and more jobs and more different jobs. It's the ones that require less work and that are cheaper to make. Those are the technologies that tend to survive. So he seems to not understand basic economics, which I find very concerning. So let's just go to this. You may not have heard of this. General Motors in America did develop an electric vehicle that was called EV1, and this is in the 1990s. So this is 30 years ago, and they leased this. This is an electric vehicle from the 1990s. They leased it to people in California and Arizona. It was popular with the people who used it, but they recalled them all. 2002, they recalled them all and crushed them and squashed them. They said that electric vehicles are not profitable, which I'll just go. So there's an interesting there's a documentary about this from 2006, and which is called "Who Killed the Electric Car," and they come up with a few suspects for who is guilty of killing the electric car. And this is 2006. At this time, electric vehicles this was before Tesla started to become popular. And they looked at these possible suspects, the reason why possibly it's General Motors, maybe it's the oil companies, maybe it's the consumers, maybe it's the government, maybe California Air Resources Board. So it's maybe the California has always had very strong environmental legislation, and they have very serious pollution issues. Los Angeles is a very polluted city, which comes from all the cars that are being driven around. Or maybe it's the batteries, or maybe it's the hydrogen lobby. These are lithium-ion batteries, which have come down by 99% since 1991. So they're now 100 times cheaper, and batteries, and probably will continue to get cheaper. So there's a point where things become cheap. Some technology does become cheaper, and there's often a point where it becomes cheap enough that it becomes widely used. And perhaps 1996 was too early for the battery technology, possibly. This was a story from last week. This is from the BBC, and this is a town in England which have bought some electric buses. And the news story is that electric buses are being charged by a diesel generator. And So because the infrastructure for charging with electricity wasn't ready yet, so they were getting electric. And this is, you're laughing at this story. And so with news, what's called subtext. So often there's a news story, there's the main story, and then there's the subtext is what is not written, but the idea behind the story. And I think in the case of this story, the subtext is that electric buses are stupid. Look at this, they bought an electric bus and they're using diesel generators to power it. Isn't that stupid? But if we look a bit closer, because diesel buses are not very efficient, electric buses are much more efficient. Even if you use electric buses and use a diesel generator to charge them, you're using less diesel than a conventional bus. So the story, and also, you could use solar power, you could use wind power, you could use, if the nuclear power station is ready, you could use nuclear power. So the story is not, look at these stupid electric buses. The story should be, these buses, you can even use diesel for these electric buses, and it will be cheaper. This is, or you could use wind, or you could use something else. But in the story does not mention this. The story is just saying, oh, this is, they're using they're using diesel generators. The city is useless. The bus company is no good. So it's kind of missing the story. I've got this. This is fake news. This is a fake news story. This is fake news. This is generated by AI. But this is equally stupid. The idea that let's get a bus, let's fill it with solar panels. This story was on this story was on the BBC is I think a good news outlet, I think, but it's still following this bias that, hey, electric vehicles are stupid. Let's find something stupid about electric vehicles, which somebody will be happy about. Hydrogen. What about hydrogen then? How about hydrogen? What do you think about hydrogen? Hydrogen is a zero-emission fuel. Hydrogen cars are better than EVs. Hydrogen is easy to store and transport. Hydrogen is the energy source of the future. Hydrogen will replace fossil fuels in most sectors. What do you think? True or false? Please discuss. Hydrogen will replace fossil fuels in most sectors. True, false. Yeah, I think these are all false. If you look at the basic, so this is looking at if you have electricity, if you have an electric vehicle for the whole system, about 73% of the electricity gets into the driving. If you're using hydrogen with a fuel cell, then it's only about 22%. So electric vehicles are about 3 times better. Storage and transportation are very difficult. Hydrogen is very small, and you need a very high pressure. It's very dangerous. What is hydrogen good for? I think it's good for there are some industrial processes that hydrogen, if we want to make steel without carbon, then hydrogen will be very useful. If you want to make ammonia is used for fertilizer, for growing food. If you have hydrogen, it may be very, very useful for that. So hydrogen does have some uses. In some cases, it may be good for storage, but it needs to be a very special situation. I think for driving cars, I think it's a very, very bad option. For heating houses, it's a very bad option, I think. Who benefits from hydrogen? Well, the fossil fuel and most hydrogen now is made from natural gas. So the fossil fuel industry, they're very happy if we use hydrogen because they can keep selling gas. And I think the idea of hydrogen fuel cells has been around for 30 years. And I think it's very helpful if you're making cars and you like making petrol cars, if you say, oh, well, we will change to hydrogen fuel cells when they're ready. We're just waiting for fuel cells to be ready. Because I think hydrogen has been the future fuel for 30 years. And it's always about 5 years in the future. And probably it will always be 5 years in the future. So hydrogen fuel cells are great for Mr. Toyota, so he can keep making his toys. But I don't think they're very useful. So this is if we look at from the documentary, they looked at different possible reasons why General Motors stopped making the electric vehicle. They found that the batteries were not perfect, but if they'd carried on developing batteries, the batteries weren't a critical problem with the technology. The consumers were partly guilty. I'll talk a bit about that maybe later. The California government was also partly guilty. Their main suspects were General Motors. And General Motors had a problem where they wanted to keep making petrol engines. They wanted to keep making internal combustion engines. And they were thinking of selling electric vehicles. But to sell electric vehicles, they need to tell people these are better than our petrol vehicles. And so they will be fighting against themselves. So I think they were very reluctant to do this. Interestingly, Tesla, I think, has been the big driving force behind electric vehicles. And they only make electric vehicles. So Tesla don't have to worry about saying that electric vehicles are better than petrol vehicles. They also have accused, so the oil companies apparently bought some patents for batteries and then stopped developing them. According to the documentary. They also, the government, the US federal government, there was a change under Reagan, and they stopped supporting. So the California had a zero emission vehicle mandate. So they wanted to start making vehicles that have no emissions. But then the national government changed that and went back on that. And of course the hydrogen lobby, which I've just mentioned, also mentioned in there. I think we should talk about efficiency. Efficiency is a good thing. If I buy a bottle of wine, I want to drink 4 glasses, not 1. So efficiency, I think, is a good thing. So more efficiency means less emissions. LEDs, these are LEDs. LEDs reduced total electricity use for lighting. Car improvements mean less carbon dioxide. And AI will reduce global energy demand. What do you think? True or false? Please discuss. All true? All false? So yeah. I think probably these are all false. Let me tell you. I'm just going to tell you about Jevons. What's called the Jevons paradox. He was a 19th century economist, and he noticed that as steam engines became more efficient, people used more coal. So we expect if efficiency gets better, then we will use less. But what Jevons found is the opposite, that as efficiency gets better, so basically what they're doing is they're pumping. So the first steam engines were used at the coal mine to pump water out of the coal mine, which means you can dig more coal, which means you can pump more water, and you can dig more coal, and then you can put a steam engine on the railway so you can send the coal further, and then at the end you can send it to the ports, and then you can make ships and put a steam engine in the ship and then start shipping coal. So as you get more efficient, you can use your engine in more different places. And let me just give you a kind of real-world example of the Jevons paradox. Let's think about taxis. So right now, if you imagine you have a taxi company, imagine, and so you need to run your taxis, you need to get fuel for the taxis, you need a driver, there are some others, insurance and the vehicle costs and the background costs, and it may cost something like 80 to 140 yen per kilometer for if you're running a taxi company. Now, robo-taxis are coming, I think. And if you have a self-driving electric vehicle, then the electricity will be 4 times cheaper. You're switching to electric rather than fuel. You don't need a driver, so your taxis will become much cheaper, maybe half the price. And so if you can reduce your costs as a taxi driver by 50%, what this means is you can reduce your taxi prices to half. And if you reduce your taxi prices, maybe it costs about, I think it's about 1,000 yen for me to get from Matsumoto city centre to my house by taxi. That's too expensive. I'm not going to pay 1,000 yen. If it was 500 yen, I may get a taxi. So if the prices go down, suddenly we get much more people, we get much more taxi drivers. So this is an example. I think probably this will happen. I'm not sure when it will happen, but I think probably this will happen, and we will have electric robo-taxis, and it will be good because that means we don't have to drive and we can get around much cheaper. I think as we all get older, I'm a bad driver now already. I'm a dangerous driver. So when I get older, I will be much more dangerous. So I shouldn't be probably now I shouldn't be driving. This is I may have shown this picture before. This is my friend runs a camping equipment shop. This is another demonstration of efficiency. So this is an LED. There's a candle in here, and there's an LED, and the candle is burning, is making heat. The heat is running what's called a thermocouple, which turns heat into electricity, and the electricity is running the LED. Now, LED light is about 30% efficient, which doesn't sound great, but compared to a candle is 0.05% efficient. So if you're trying to use a candle for light, it's incredibly inefficient. But the heat coming from that thermocouple, 5% is also not very efficient. But the amount of light that you're getting from the LED is much, much more than the light coming from the candle. So this kind of shows us, how lighting technology has become much, much more efficient over the last few hundred years. And in fact, this is LED improvement since the 1970s that's been going steadily improving. This is going since the 1930s. This is the price of lighting this is from the UK. This is a study in the UK. And as over the 20th century, the price of lighting went down, and at the same time, the amount of lighting has gone up. And this is this shows us the efficiency has gone up something like 1,000 times, but the amount of lighting used has gone up maybe 6,000 or 7,000 times. So the amount of lighting is going up more than the efficiency is going up. So this is quite a common thing. We can see this with cars. One thing, cars have become more efficient, but also this is a Mini. The original Mini is a Mini, and then the background is a new, and the new Mini is not a Mini at all. It's massive. Cars have become more efficient, but as cars get more efficient, people just buy bigger cars. This is data from the US, and in the 70s under Carter and the oil shock, people started to get more efficient cars, and there was a real increase in efficiency. And this is the actual efficiency of cars on the road. Then from Reagan, efficiency went down. So the cars became less efficient under Reagan until about 2005, when efficiency has gone up again. This is US data, and a big thing. This is the breakdown of cars. The ones at the top are sedans or estate cars, station wagons. So most in the 1970s, most cars on the road were small cars with sedans, and what's happened is the SUV has kind of taken off, and people started to use SUVs rather than small cars. I think one thing with this was there was a tax break. If you buy a company car, if you buy a car for your business, you could get tax back on the car. So lots of people, instead of buying a car, they would buy an SUV and say, "Oh, this is for my this is for my work," and so effectively the U.S. government was subsidizing SUVs, was paying people money to buy bigger cars. So this is what's happened, and this is the US. This is the efficiency. This is the most efficient cars at the top and the least efficient cars. There's around 2010. This is the kind of Tesla spike. So as electric vehicles started to become commercially available, the efficiency has just rocketed. And of course, most cars are not at the best level. Half of the cars are in this band, which is now getting more efficient, but they're still not at the top level of efficiency. So this is what's happening. Couple of lessons from the 20th century. People don't always make rational decisions. So it seems to me, getting an electric vehicle, I don't know why doesn't everybody have an electric vehicle? It seems, I don't understand that you're throwing away 3 glasses of wine every day. And people, if there's a way for people to spend money, people will spend money. If you can find some way for people to use their money, they will use it. But also incentives can help. So if there's an incentive to put solar panels on your roof, people will put solar panels on your roof. If there's an incentive to buy a big SUV, people will buy a big SUV. So hopefully the incentives can push us in the right direction. And the other thing as well is that the way economics work, economics is mostly looking at profits. Where can we make money? And if fossil fuels are profitable, then we will keep having fossil fuels. And if clean technology is profitable, then we will have more clean technology. Now, I think this is not a choice. Both of these things can be true. Just because renewable energy is cheap, that doesn't mean people will stop using fossil fuel energy. They can stop using fossil fuel energy, but it's not necessary, it's not inevitable. So what will happen? Clean technologies will reduce global emissions. This is not necessarily true. Hopefully, they can help. Innovation is fast enough to meet climate change. Innovation is moving quickly, but also emissions are moving quickly. Everything that's going into the atmosphere is staying there. I don't know if the innovation is fast enough. Markets will solve climate change. I don't think so, unless the markets are pushed to support climate change. Governments support renewable energy more than fossil fuels. Governments support fossil fuels. Right now, governments are paying more money into fossil fuels than they are into renewable energy. The markets, on the other hand, the markets are investing more into renewable energy. So now in the market, in the free market, more money is going into solar and wind because it's cheaper. Governments are continuing to put money into fossil fuels for various reasons. So this is from 2023. clean energy, so something like $1.8 trillion has gone into new clean energy against 1.1 trillion in fossil fuels. The government's supporting clean energy at less than it's supporting fossil fuel energy. And also there's something like the IMF has estimated that fossil fuels are costing us something like 6 trillion yen per year in health damage, in flood damage, climate change damage, crop damage. The big question, can we solve the climate problem? If we look at the physics, we must solve this problem. If we look at the technology, we have the technology, we can solve the problem. Economics wants short-term and medium-term profits. It wants to know this year, how much money are we going to make? Maybe 5 years. I think in economics, 25 years is infinity. So everything past 25 years, economics doesn't care. And politics is, I want votes in the next election. So we have these competing forces, and as far as justice is concerned, the people who are benefiting now, they are not the same as the people who will pay later. The people who caused climate change are not the same as the people who will suffer from climate change. So there's a real inequality and I don't know what's going to happen. But there's definite climate justice is definitely an issue, and this will start when the sea levels start to go up, and when countries start to go underwater. This could be very serious. So I've been thinking about the future. I can think of 4 different futures. The first one, this is my favourite one. This is the rosy future, that very quickly we electrify transport, heating, industry. Everything goes to electricity. It becomes more efficient. We get more solar, more wind, storage, and the grids scale quickly. And there's cooperation between different countries. Fossil fuels peak this year, and then we start to have less and less fossil fuels from 2026. And this means that warming will stay below 2 degrees. So it will get warmer than now, but not much warmer. This is the rosy future. The middle future is that the transition will happen, but not evenly. So some places, Norway, maybe Nepal, some places will transition quickly. Other places will transition slowly. The policies will be inconsistent, so different policies in different places. The fossil fuel industry will continue to sell fossil fuels. There will be a peak, but not for another 10, 20 years. And then the fall may be quite slow. So we'll get maybe 2 or 3 degrees of warming. And that means adaptation. That means we're going to need to change where we live and how we live. Next is the dark future, which the fossil fuel continue to expand. We continue to get more fossil fuels. We do get more efficiency, but thanks to Jevons, that just means that we use more, so consumption goes up. The policies are weak. Geopolitics is fragmented. No cooperation across countries. Emissions keep going up, and we get more than 3 degrees of warming, and which means some places we cannot adapt. So this is not very good. There'll be food shortages, mass migrations, lots of instability. I don't know if we'll still be here in 2100. Maybe we won't be here, but the next one is a kind of cynical, a cynical view of what may happen. That we will get resources will be restricted for 99% of the population. So most people will not be allowed to use lots of energy, will not be allowed to use lots of resources. The rich will adapt and look after themselves. The system will stabilize around inequality. So we'll have a system that's based on 1% can do what they like, 99% stay poor. And this could keep warming below 2 degrees. So this is a solution for the climate problem. I don't think this is a particularly good solution, but this could also happen. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen? Which of these options? And time is running out. Do you have any questions as well? Please discuss any questions, any predictions. What do you think? Please discuss. I'll give you a couple of minutes to talk to each other, and then see what you have to say.
And what do you think about the data still concentrations?
I don't think it's a very big problem. I think it's a relatively small problem. I think compared to, for example, aeroplanes, or heating, or cars, or steel, or concrete. I think again this is news. It's news. It's a news story, and data centers do need energy. I think they will. What they're saying we need all this energy. We need lots of energy. But I think they don't need as much as they say, because efficiency. I think they actually need. They're saying, like if you say, I can give you how much money would you like? I can lend you some money. How much would you like? Maybe you'd say, 10,000 yen, please. But maybe you only need 5,000 yen. But you will tell me 10,000 yen. So I think that's partly happening, that the data centers are saying, we need lots of electricity. We're going to grow, and But yeah, I think they're. I think they're not. That's not distraction. Climate change is the big problem, and I think that's not. It's not the highest. It's not the biggest user, I think. And also, I think there's a lot of potential for data. For example, if I can use those data centers to have a meeting with people in America and Australia, then I don't need to fly in an aeroplane. So compared to international flights for meetings, there's an upside. They can be used. But very good question. Okay. So just a very quick conclusion. I think we're looking at science, technology, economics, and politics, and they're all kind of moving in different directions. The science will not save us. Science just tells us how things work. If we ignore the science may kill us. And the same with technology. The technology may not save us, and the technology may kill us. AI could kill us to solve the climate problem. Economics follows the money, and again, economists tell us what happened. They look at an economic situation. And politics, just to pick up on politics, politics can change everything, as we've seen from what's happening in America. So what we should do, I think what we need to do, and when I say we, I mean humans, we need to, energy efficiency, we need energy efficiency. Without energy efficiency, nothing is possible, but that's not enough. I think we should be electrifying everything, anything we can turn to electricity. If you're getting a new hot water heater, get an electric heater. If you're buying a new car, get an electric car. It just makes sense. It's and eat less meat. Meat is globally very damaging. It's using lots of resources, and most important, engage in politics. There's a trend for people to ignore politics and say politics is boring, politics is not relevant, and I think this is very dangerous. This is where we talk about the dark future. We need to engage with politics, because we do need strong politicians who will work together and who will say what we need to do and say what is true. So thank you. Thank you very much. This has been fun. Thank you. and I hope for a cool summer and many cool summers. Thank you very much.